welcome to another episode of the Growth Compass. Shout out to our sponsor, Senders. If you're doing cold outreach and you want to do deliverability correctly, you hit the link in the description. But without them, it wouldn't be possible to interview awesome people like Jen Ryan. What's going on?
Hi there.
This is super cool. Not everybody, actually, I would guess probably nobody listening knows, but this is a conversation that we've been trying to put together for a long time. And it's just really awesome what you're building. I think your business model, everything that I could find online. Hospitality is very important to my family. So I appreciate that you're in that space. But for everyone that doesn't know and isn't yet as excited as I am, could you just give a little introduction?
Sure. I am a tech startup founder trying to make some magic. In particular, I'm focused on connecting everyday Americans with flexible work, fast pay, and health and wellness benefits. I'm really excited about allowing people that have been sidelined from traditional work. Maybe you're a parent or you've already got a day job and you need some extra cash, or you're a student or a retiree, maybe you're military. Bringing those folks into the fold and connecting them with flexible work in an industry that I also love, hospitality, where it holds up 10% of our country's GDP and it needs some extra hands right now. So we're bringing these two worlds together that have a hard time finding themselves. We're powering it with AI, and we're doing it in a lot of places right in the middle of the country that need a lot of extra love right now.
Awesome. Wow. Already in the introduction, that is a cool fact. Something that I learned, 10% GDP. That's pretty nuts. So something before we get into the world of Croux is I've also seen on your profile page that you've been or that you've lived in several places. So
Yes.
what are those places and what brought you
So
there?
I have lived around. I'm from the West Coast, so born and raised in Southern California. I went to college on the East Coast and then stuck around New York City for 10 years to work on Wall Street. My husband's job took us to the South, Birmingham, Alabama to be specific, where we were there for almost a decade. There I built my restaurant and we launched Croux. And then my husband's job took us to the Midwest, and we're now in Wisconsin. And we're able to, so fortunately, expand Croux to this state and this region. But it means that I have had the wonderful front row seat to places and spaces that I really had not experienced firsthand when I was living on the coast. And that experience, that perspective has shaped everything I do today, where we're launching the business, the types of people we're supporting, the types of problems we believe we're solving, and how we think about solving those problems. So it has been very informative. It has been very instructive. It's been very important to be able to have that front row seat to see communities that I hadn't seen firsthand before. So I feel very privileged to have had all these experiences across the country. And man, they've all been different, but they've all been pretty beautiful in different ways.
What was your first experience doing something entrepreneurial? It doesn't have to be your first company, but something that I guess that you would, or it can be, just something that you would label as your first entrepreneurial
Sure.
experience.
On paper, that would have been my restaurant, which I'm probably an atypical entrepreneur. I meet so many entrepreneurs that have had this entrepreneurial spirit since they were kids. A side hustle at the schoolyard. I certainly worked, different jobs growing up. But I really will tell you, whether it's the thing that people want to hear or not, I had a pretty, cookie cutter experience leading up to that. To college, I worked at a bank. I worked, really from then on, I was trying to find opportunities in places that I didn't have a lot of insight into, but I found interesting. So from financial services, I moved into technology and cybersecurity. And from there, I moved into the small business space. So I had a few chapters under my belt of more traditional work when I went into the world of entrepreneurialism. I think in some ways it teed me up to be really successful because I was able to see the systems at work. And I was able to utilize a lot of the learnings from more corporate places in smaller ecosystems, a restaurant, a tech startup. And that was really helpful. Many of my entrepreneurial friends had totally different journeys, and they were doing very entrepreneurial things at very young ages and had no traditionalistic experiences. Wherever you're coming from, I do feel like, however you got there, if you are finding yourself at a crossroads where you have the potential to help solve a problem, it doesn't really matter what experience you bring, right? Or what the chapters looked like before. You might be the perfect person to solve it. And so I just found that I was at that crossroads when I moved to Birmingham and I was looking for healthy food and I couldn't find it, that I built something that didn't exist. And I did it with a lot of acumen and insights from more traditionalistic work. I learned a lot about what it means to be an entrepreneur. But that chapter, that's what allowed me to stand confidently on 2 feet to launch Crew with some great people.
Yeah. Well, so to expand on that a little more, maybe I'm sure there's a lot, but maybe if you could choose one experience or memory or something that you had prior to your restaurant that put you in a position that helped you grow into the type of person, helped you cultivate the mindset to where you had this opportunity to start a company, to start a restaurant, and you said yes to taking on so much ambiguity and risk and all of that. Like what contributed to making you that person that would say yes?
So, along the way, for whatever it's worth, I found myself to be the wild card candidate. I am never the most experienced. I certainly don't have the resume to back me up to be in whatever position I'm in. And I found myself an English literature major with zero econ classes under my belt, applying for jobs on Wall Street. I was not the candidate that most people were looking for. And I found a role in a bank with people that believed in my ability to learn quickly, get the job done, ask the right questions. But it was those reps in a space and place that I really had no business being in that started to build the confidence muscle, right? I belonged there. I deserved to be there. I worked hard to remain there. But it also was a really good reminder that I had the ability to walk into other rooms or spaces and places that maybe on paper I didn't have any business being in. But if I committed to learning, asking the right questions, being thoughtful with how to spend my time, spending time with the people that were successful in those places, it seemed like any door could be pushed open. That seems really confident for a 20 something year old, maybe even borderline questionably arrogant. The experience for me had been one of great mentorship and sponsorship around me. So I had these people that were advocating for me. So I certainly wasn't by myself. And I learned quickly to admit clearly when I did not know something. And the freedom of being able to say, I'm not sure, I don't know, let me check into that and learn how to learn was really helpful. But to date myself a little bit, there was this moment, the great financial crisis, when I was just out of college.
Mm.
And there was a moment at the bank when many people were left without a job, except for the very most senior people, the leadership, and the cheap labor like me. And in that experience, I was tasked with doing more than I probably would have been tasked with had it been any other backdrop, right?
Wow,
And
interesting.
so the circumstances were fiery, difficult, ambiguous. You've read about these in the papers if you weren't there yourself. It was a very challenging time. And for someone like me who didn't quite have the macro context as to what it meant, I knew it felt bad, but I just didn't have the broad understanding of how bad. But what I did know was that there was this wide open opportunity to now be included in conversations, deliverables, driving towards some outcomes that I probably wouldn't have been invited into had the backdrop not been there. So it was that really, really terrifying moment for the world, but there was some, I tend to be an optimist. There was some opportunity. What did it mean?
Thank you for doing that.
How do we see, is there a door open? Is there something we can learn? Is there something we can do? Is there something we can glean? And for me, that just meant learning what I could on the job. I was lucky enough to have a job. And that was really, really instructive, that chapter of a couple of years. So much so it felt like it expedited my learning by a decade.
Yeah. So then when it came time to jump into that, why was it a restaurant?
So most entrepreneurs will say out loud, I have been banging my head against the wall because this problem is bothering me. Whatever the problem is, it could be a product problem, it could be a technology problem, it could be, something small, something big. For me, when I moved to Birmingham, a really cool culinary town, a very sweet southern city, I was traveling a lot for work. I was looking to support myself mentally and physically, and part of that was eating really good food. We have amazing agricultural systems in the South. We are close to a lot of things. It is warm most of the year. Beautiful things grow within near proximity. I couldn't figure out why all of this farm to table experience was happening only at the fine dining scene. I wanted an awesome salad for lunch. And that turned into a problem that I wanted to outsource to someone. So I called everybody I knew at places that we all know, sweet green, chopped, kava, come to Birmingham. And this was in 2017, maybe 18. No one wanted to come to Alabama.
Why is that?
It wasn't interesting enough. For whatever it's worth, it wasn't a compelling opportunity set. Now, a lot of those places are there now. But, 7, 8 years ago, they were not. And so, in true entrepreneurial fashion, I couldn't let this problem go. And so I just decided, despite all the naysayers, I was going to do it myself. I had no business launching a restaurant, but it reminded me of a lot of those chapters I had launched into before where I had no business being the candidate that was selected, an English major going to Wall Street, person who was on Wall Street for 10 years moving into cybersecurity. We took this wonderful, decade-old startup to IPO. I did not have the chops or the acumen or the knowledge to launch a restaurant. But as you get older, you realize, maybe if you're young enough and self-aware enough, you realize it sooner. The faster you recognize your blind spots or the gaps that you have, and the faster you try to fill them with great people around you, you can build fast and you can build furiously and you can build, pretty incredible things. And so I teamed up with a James Beard Award-winning chef who is amazing. And he built a culinary program. And I lent what I could in terms of, systems, procedures, hiring, protocols, customer experience, most of the stuff I was learning on the fly. And we built something. And that was the hardest job I ever had, running a restaurant, bar none.
Well, I heard you say, recognize your blind spots, fill them with wonderful people, then you can build fast. So if that's the answer, that works. But I am curious, as somebody that one day I do want to open a restaurant, if there's one or two things you would say you take from your experience, you would say like, do this or watch out for this. This is a common pitfall.
Yes, I have so many of them, but that's not the point of this podcast. So I'll keep it light. If you want to go down this road, I am happy to expound. A couple things come to mind. The success rates of restaurants are very low. And so I think I knew that, but I probably should have really, really deeply understood that. I decided to pursue an SBA loan to help me launch my flagship, which was a significant amount of money. And I did it after 1 full year of testing the business. So we did product testing via farmers markets and catering. And you know where I'm going with this when I tell you that prep year was in 2019. Because when my business plan was approved in December of 2019 and my SBA loan came through on February 2020, these are things you can't plan for. And so we didn't have a risk mitigation plan in place for such a wild event as a pandemic. So we were already starting on our back foot in a space where the success rates are not very high. Here is what I will tell you, what all of the smart people told me. I tried to take their advice, but I certainly wasn't perfect. There is this needle that you have to thread with showcasing an excellent experience when you're first out of the gates. Because first impressions, as much as you may not want to admit, people are very judgmental. They want to come and they need to have a perfect experience, particularly if you're in a place where people chat. Smaller town or a neighborhood where people will have a conversation about you. So things have to be exceptional. In order to have exceptional execution, you need a lot of bodies. Right? A single unit mom and pop shop does not have robotics at play and massive amounts of technology. It ends up being a lot of hands. Hands are very expensive. If you're like me that felt really strongly about paying living wages and supporting the team that I had in order to reduce turnover, ensure that they had a great place to come to work, it becomes a very thick line item on the balance sheet. And it's really hard to manage when day to day you do not have consistency in the amount of product going out the door and the amount of dollars coming in. So what would I say? I would say, like most startups, make sure that you're solving a problem that people actually really buy into. If you're doing this for you, make sure that you have loads of money and you're okay with losing it all. But if you want to build something scalable and sustainable, just like any other product, make sure that you do your market research beforehand. Will people come there? Not just because of you. That will end after the first or second cup of coffee or glass of wine. Will they keep coming? Because it is the place they want to be, whatever you're trying to achieve. Fast casual lunch, a place to hang out, And the second is location. Everyone says this, but it's important. It matters. Are you going to be in a place where there is activity and foot traffic and engagement? Because being a destination is really hard. And third, well, I have many more, but a few more, one of which is And if you think about capital, it takes a lot. It takes way more than you think. And there needs to be enough for what we'll call cash reserves for when things will go sideways within the first 6 months. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in case of emergency. That's a lot of money just to have sitting. And so you may deploy it, you may not. Things always cost more. But I think the way you get that capital is important. I chose debt. And had I known a pandemic was coming, had I known, I probably would have
Sure.
made different decisions. But hindsight's not helpful in this point. That was the decision I made. I think having investors, I felt really strongly about control. And as I look back on that, I don't think that was the hill I should have died on, right? I would have been better off, in my opinion. The restaurant was amazing. It was an incredible chapter. We sold it the end of last year. But I think we would have been
Congrats.
teed up for more success, thank you, if we had brought in investors that could have lent some level of acumen and credibility,
Got it.
right? So those are a couple of the insights, but I think everything costs more. The people are the hardest part, and everything takes longer than you think. So therefore,
Dropping
everything
it.
wisdom.
Wisdom, wisdom, wisdom.
Yeah.
So to what? So
But hey,
again, just insatiable curiosity can't not ask the question. So when you're building a specific product or maybe like a B2B solution, there is an aspect of you have to solve a real problem. And there are certain products or services that, to me, it's not only like you are solving a problem, but there's a degree of you're telling people what they want as well. And it's not necessarily like, I think a traditional negative view of sales is like convincing someone that they don't need something. But, to what extent is something like a restaurant, because somebody could, judge a restaurant on the outside, go in and have a great time. To what extent is it you're solving a real problem with a restaurant versus doing marketing justice and the customer experience justice, and, telling like marketing that, telling people that it's what they need at a particular time, because they have like 10,000 restaurants at their disposal at any time.
right.
So
Right. I think it depends there's a couple things. It depends what your end game is. So if your end game is to build several units, bundle it up and sell to private equity. If your end game is to have one spot that is the local spot and that is your project where you go and you spend your life. I think you got to orient around what your North Star is, because there are probably going to be different types of things that you build based on what that looks like. So for example, I never have run a fine dining restaurant. I am not equipped to do that. That is not my skill set. I chose fast casual because what I wanted to do was take skills that I had, which were building something, being able to put some systems around it, scale it, and then build it and sell. Now, that's a different end game than maybe somebody who's really passionate about the industry and wants to create that local hub that is always theirs, and they become entrenched in the community. So I think getting really clear on like what your end game is really important. I do think you need to still orient around solving a problem. And then the one thing I didn't say before was I think one needs to start small and build on that. That's hard in a restaurant. You can't just build out half the restaurant and then hope people come. And then if it's working, build out the other half. But find the smallest footprint. Test the concept as much as you can beforehand. And again, it kind of goes back to the vibe you're looking for. I was looking for something that had a very specific demographic, people that were looking for fast, healthy lunches. It could have been a mom, it could have been a work person, but I knew my audience really well. So I tested aggressively with them for a year to see if the menu even like sat with them. Because what I was trying to do was stuff healthy food down the throats of the people in the third unhealthiest state in America. And I needed to make sure that there was a market for it. And I found it, but I needed to make sure that it was there. So it kind of goes back to what's your end game? What are you looking to do? But I do think that idea of corroborating that there is something missing from someone's experience. They can't find the local bar, the cool hangout, the coffee shop they've always wanted, the fast casual healthy restaurant, whatever it might be. Got to make sure it's there, because I don't believe in the concept if you build it, they will come. It doesn't mean that I don't think you can lead them down a path where you're providing interesting, innovative things. Could be products, could be menu items. But I think that, one needs to clarify what he or she is hoping to get out of it. Is it monetary? Is it emotional? You're going to be spending a boatload of time there. So you just need to know that you got to get comfortable with being where the buck stops last. And then lead these people down a journey, a culinary journey, a product journey, once you have them captive. But I do feel strongly that you've got to make sure you've got some group of people that are really excited and going to take the leap. They're showing up, not just again for the launch, but they're going to keep showing up, because you can't pivot when you've got all the hard costs of a restaurant. It's
Yeah.
really hard, right? It's really hard. Different than software, different than a lot of these other businesses.
Well, so as far as all those ideas go, with understanding what you want and depending on the direction you're going, being able to communicate that to other people in a vision, and ultimately how it impacts the way that you build what you're building, how do all of those questions get answered for you as far as Crew goes?
Where shall I start? Where would you like me to start with that?
Let's see, what are the different areas that pop up in your head?
Let's see. Okay. If I'm going to share some insights on some learnings from the past couple of years, the thing that the restaurant taught me was to build small and iterate quickly. It
Okay.
was something I couldn't do. And so maybe this is or is not answering your question super directly, but when we think about the vision of Crew, we had a broad view of what we were trying to achieve. Empowering a group of people that have otherwise been sidelined from the workforce in order to level up local communities via hospitality that needed it. I needed to bring these two sides together
Where did that come from?
from not being able to staff up my restaurant during COVID.
Wow.
So
Okay,
when
connecting
schools
dots.
closed, yeah, when schools closed in Birmingham, my workers chose their families, their kids. They
Sure.
couldn't come to work. We were daytime. And so in Birmingham, this very incredible, charming, elegant, lovely little community that has a killer food scene. The people in the food scene love on each other. I was an outsider coming in, and I cannot tell you how much love I felt from the old guard, the people who were like the guys in charge, to the newbies like me. I mean, it was pretty amazing. I didn't expect it. I was so fortunate. But there is a real camaraderie with trying to help one another in this community. And so this notion of, if my people can't work for me here today, could they pick up a shift at our friend's bar down the street tonight? And so this kind of, let's call it sharing of labor, rotation, just this flexibility, fluidity in order to get people paid while keeping the lights on at local businesses was what was allowing us all to survive. You know, the major text threads all of the business owners are on to everybody we know. Can you come and wash dishes today? Do you think you could like spare me a few hours? Could you come bartend tonight? I mean, it is constant. You ask anybody in hospitality, they're probably on that chain, or they're sending, if they're running some hospitality organization, they're probably sending those texts. Is anyone free? Can you help me? You've got sort of your plan B. I've got my people that are on the payroll, and then I've got everybody else I know. It could be friends, it could be family, it could be the bartenders we bartended with for 20 years.
So that did
That,
exist.
oh yeah, that's what
Okay,
you
okay.
just ask anybody in hospitality. They're probably on a text thread.
Yeah.
You know, hey Johnny, anytime you need somebody, like just put me on your text or shoot
Yeah,
me a
yeah.
note, you know? And so what we did was take that text thread online, and now AI powers the connections, right? So we're identifying who's looking for work, how far they are from work, what their skills are, what their interests are, what their availability is, all the things that we know about them and that they care to share about themselves with the businesses that need extra help. During COVID, we tried to manufacture that with some text threads and some bubblegum and duct tape. And all of us, my co-founders and I looked at each other and we were like, there's got to be a better way. There's absolutely got to be a better way. And so that was the beginning of asking ourselves, could we start to bring more, sort of technological infrastructure to the connectivity? Because it's just not, it wasn't efficient,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it was
yeah.
trying to get the job done. And what it was without meaning to, forgetting hundreds, if not thousands of people that would have loved to have been on those text threads. But they just didn't know the person to ask, right? That were looking for work. And that was COVID. And so things got wild. And we were all trying to figure it out.
Got
And
wild.
we all
And out
survived.
of it, yeah, out of it came a company. So when you said you started, one thing that you learned from the restaurant was start small and iterate. What form did that take?
Hmm. We started in one market that we knew, our very own backyard. We started with a couple of local partners, local bars and restaurants. We earned the trust of talent to join us to do this thing that they'd never done before. We kind of sounded like Uber for hospitality, but it was a new idea.
Did it start with
And
like Excel sheets and like manually
yeah,
matching
of
people?
course. Oh, of course. Yeah. And our CTO, I will say, he really did develop the matching program that now AI powers everything. But like in the earliest days, that was really pre where AI is today. Obviously, are all living this experience where every day feels like it's a huge step forward, a huge leap.
What's the
This
CTO's
was
name?
before that time. Kenny Kung, a
Shout out
magician.
Kenny.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Thank
And
you,
so Kenny built
magician.
a product to bring the two worlds together. But you're right, a lot of it was manual, but that's how companies start. You have to
Right, right.
corroborate that they're actually able to solve a problem before you build the technology. And that was so imperative for us, which was, can we just make the magic happen and prove that we're doing something that works, and then we'll build the technology versus building some big, beautiful product and then hoping people use it. So that's what we were doing. So we all put in a little capital and we just started really small, just iterating and iterating. And then there were more bites and more subscriptions and more signups. And then you keep adding.
So at the very beginning, you were still charging people subscription.
Oh yeah. But it was month to month. And we tried to make it as tolerable, simple, clear, transparent. Use us if you need us and subscribe to Crew. And then, we really were focused on this sort of the local establishments in Birmingham. People we knew, they were our friends. They were
Hmm.
in the industry with us. They were also feeling the pain.
Well, I think that's a really interesting point because I think a lot of times when people are at that idea validation level, they choose not to charge people. They don't want to sell. But I think a more, I don't know, evolved, if you want to say, like, perspective on that is that if you really want to test an idea, you ask people to pay for it, and if they pay for it, it's solving enough of a problem where they're actually hitting you. So how did you come across? Was that just a lesson you had learned, or is that
Oh,
did you
yeah.
just happen to
We
do that?
learned
Or
it. No, we learned it. I'm trying to think back to the earliest days. I know we gave things away for free at the very beginning.
well,
Would you
okay,
use this? Would you test it?
yeah,
Give
yeah,
us
yeah.
feedback. But truly, by within the first 12 months of building the product, we were certainly charging. I cannot remember the, sort of the percentage or how many clients we had on at that point, but we were charging. And it was important for us from a couple of perspectives. We had not taken outside capital. So we put in our own money and then we won a few local grants. And so we kept things really lean and really light. And so revenue was important in some way, shape, or form to keep the lights on. But we also agreed with your philosophy, which was let's see who's actually going to pay for this and ensure we're not manufacturing some sort of a win. Because if you give something to somebody, there's not a lot of skin in the game, right?
That's right.
So it certainly started small, and it certainly started with we really tried to make the on ramp as clean and simple as possible, right? Use us if you need us, no strings attached, no contracts. I just tried to take the risk out of it. Put yourself in their shoes. We were all operators, so we knew we didn't want to be sold something that we had to be hanging on to for a year. So we just tried to put ourselves in their shoes, and I think that was just the great advice we got early on. Just be empathetic,
Yeah.
understand what problem you're solving. And so once we could demonstrate that we were solving the problem, it could sell itself.
So then I don't know if we have time for the million questions I have about how you're going about growing Crew now. In however you want to answer it, I am curious because it is really important what you were just saying as far as the start of it, the validation, the quick iteration, stuff like that. Things have scaled very significantly, which is awesome, and congratulations for that. You're impacting a lot of people's lives. But as far as I think you're as far as I understand, your business model is essentially marketplace. There's a supply and demand and there's a matchmaking algorithm. How do you go about it's a very difficult puzzle to complete nicely to grow that because you have supply growth and you have demand side growth and they have to be relatively equal for the whole thing to work. So as far as growth strategies, growth tactics, like how do you and your team think about these things?
They're definitely puzzles to solve. This is what makes marketplaces, in my opinion, so magical. They're intellectual problems that keep you thinking and keep you up at night. Is marketplaces are also things I've learned before I answer your question that are either, you sort of have a binary response to them when you talk to investors, when you talk to, potential coworkers to come on board. People really like them and they get them, or they really don't because they are very tricky, to your point. Those who can figure them out can be really big winners and you can take over a space. When we think about growing and scaling, what we wanted to do was demonstrate step by step that, and for us, that might be market by market, that we could be successful in an ecosystem. Here's the trickiness on top of what you just said is that every market has a bit of nuance. They're not all the same. So the playbooks all, are different across the board a little bit too. We're in the Southeast and we're in the Midwest, and those two places don't operate the same way. Whether it's personality, weather, or just how early or late the sun rises or sets. These sound like silly things, but they're all how easy it is to get around. All these things play into the workforce. and the work that needs to be done. All that to be said is when we think about growth right now, we're in 6 different markets today. I really care about, and I know my team agrees, we really care about getting it right in the places that we're in. I do not care about vanity metrics of being able to demonstrate to somebody on a piece of paper, I'm in X number of markets because it's a badge of honor. There's no upside for me to be delivering a C plus product in many markets, even if it sounds like I've grown a lot. It's much more important and impactful for us to be able to deliver an A plus product in fewer markets and continue to sharpen the playbook. And that's where we are today. And so we are sharpening where we are. We are learning so much. Technology is a piece of this. It's constantly evolving. The talent and what they're looking for and asking, how we are engaging with them, what the needs of the sort of macro landscape looks like. All of these inputs inform how we think about the world. But what we've really tried to do is leverage AI to help combat the intrinsic challenges of marketplaces. Supply demand imbalances, liquidity building on both sides, scaling, trust and safety. These are excellent places for AI to play a role. And that's where we've built in our agentic workforce. And that's what's allowed us to be able to do a lot with a little. We raised very little capital a couple of years ago, and we have a team of 6 now. We don't intend to grow very much from a personnel perspective, but we've done a lot with very few dollars, very few people. And this last lesson, back to the restaurant and back to here, run as lean as you can, run lean. And we really believe in that capital efficiency. So today it's running lean, understanding where every dollar goes, making sure every dollar counts. And I know that sounds a little contrived, but we have pulled most traditional marketing because it did not serve us and it was wasted dollars, in my opinion. And we've leaned into very unique tactics thanks to the great support staff and team and marketing minds that we have that are connected to Croux, because we wanted to do things differently, but we needed to make sure those dollars were landing. We have hired very few people, but hired high octane people to do a lot. And those have been our sort of, those have been part of the magic. But at the end of the day, marketplaces are hard, and we are so grateful to have really, really strong technology to help us think about those big gaps that are innate with marketplaces. And also, we're not afraid to think about things differently. We've got big incumbents in this space. There's players that have been around for 10 years, staffing agencies for 50. We are not afraid to think about things a little bit differently. And I think that's why we've been able to chip away in the spaces that we're in and really leave a lasting impact. But we have a lot of work to do. We're just getting started. Yeah.
Well, thank you for all that context, and I wish we could expand, but I do have. I guess we can next time on the next episode. But
Yes.
with all the work that you have in front of you and all the work that you have done, I am curious. It can be small, it can be something that's overarching, things like that. But what inspires you?
A lot of things. I have a little 4-year-old girl at home, so I feel really proud to get up every morning and demonstrate to her that whatever your background, whatever your resume, as odd as mine might be, whatever the experience, wherever you live, you can go out and build something pretty meaningful for the communities that you're in. I feel very, very lucky to have lived in different places across this country, to see the world through the eyes of different communities. And I feel very lucky to be able to serve some of the smaller communities that I believe have been overlooked and underloved. And I am pretty darn lucky to have a great partner that cheers me on every day. So there are people that I get up for in the morning, and there are communities that keep me going. Also, it would be remiss if I didn't mention my amazing team. But we're doing this because we believe that the communities that we're serving deserve more. And like I said before, there is a real opportunity to level up from an economic perspective some of the communities that are really important to this country that have been underserved. So we're pumped to be able to support.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing what inspires you, because what you're doing inspires me. And I thank you for sharing your perspective and a little bit of your story. If people are interested in following you or getting updates on Croux, the best way to get in contact or follow you is...
Yes, go to LinkedIn. That's Croux, Croux, or Jennifer Ryan on LinkedIn as well. Reach out, say hello, and follow us. The journey is out there and live for y'all to join us on. So thanks for the support.
Awesome. Well, sounds good. Well, I'm excited for all the updates in the next couple of months, and just again, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.